Your dog and a stranger are drowning. You can only save one. Who do you choose? Dennis Prager says your answer reveals everything about how you define right and wrong. In his new book, If There Is No God, Prager exposes the danger of emotion-based morality and why, without objective truth, society descends into chaos. This isn't a religious book. It's a rational case for moral clarity in a confused age. If There Is No God, from Dennis Prager. Order now at pragerstore.com. Welcome to Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager. Hear thousands of hours of Dennis's lectures, courses, and classic radio programs. And to purchase Dennis Prager's Rational Bibles, go to DennisPrager.com. On today's episode of Timeless Wisdom.
So there's no way around it. You can't ignore Jew hatred, not because it's not moral to ignore it. It's just in our self-interest to worry about this hatred, the greatest in history.
That's coming up on Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager, and it starts right now.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Where was God? Isn't God supposed to be good? Isn't he supposed to love us? And does God want us to suffer?
10 years, you're not finished yet? Morty! Why did you do this to me?
Who are you?
Bruce, I'm God. Bingo! Yahtzee! Is that your final answer? Our survey says God! Bing, 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 bing. Well, it was nice to meet you, God. Thank you for the Grand Canyon, and good luck with the apocalypse.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ultimate Issues Hour on the Dennis Prager Show. I devote this hour at exactly this time each week to some great issue of life. What triggers this week's Ultimate Issue, the greatest hatred in the world, and I'll tell you what it is in a moment. You will guess momentarily when I tell you what triggered it is a short article that I suspect almost no one has seen. And it is about an Iranian swimmer who was removed by his government from swimming in one of the heats, these things, the preliminaries to getting into the major races in the Olympics. It's a trial. And, these are the greatest swimmers of every country competing, and the winners of those go on to become members of the teams or just to actual finals in the Olympics. So it's the biggest opportunity, obviously, for these swimmers. In any event, there was the 100-meter breaststroke, and the Iranian swimmer, Mohammad Budarian, 19 years old, withdrew from the Olympics. Why? Because in the pool at the same time as he would be a swimmer from Israel. An Iranian in the Olympics will leave the Olympics rather than be in the same swimming pool or at the same racetrack as an Israeli. And this, I argue, is unique. It is unique because Jew hatred is unique. There has never been as deep, as wide, as ongoing a hatred as the hatred of Jews. There just isn't. There is no parallel in history to the depth, breadth, width, length of Jew hatred. And therefore, there is no equivalent in the world today to the hatred of Israel, the Jewish state. I mean, if Jew hatred has been the greatest hatred, then Jewish state hatred will be the greatest state hatred. It's pretty obvious. People aren't going to say, "Oh, I hate the Jews, but I love the Jewish state." It doesn't work that way. There is nothing like it, and it is an ultimate issue for many reasons. One is that it needs to be explained, and whatever your explanation, it certainly goes to the heart of the human condition, because the Jews are tiny, but not peripheral. That's by the way part of the reason for the grandeur of the hatred, the centrality of this very tiny people in history. It's also an ultimate issue because this hatred leads to vast, vast suffering on planet Earth. Of course, first of the Jews, but never of the Jews only. Jew hatred gave us the war in Europe called World War II. The Nazis' centerpiece was to exterminate Jews. It was more important to kill Jews than win World War II. That was Hitler's first and foremost battle. And you know how we know? Not only because he took a German armaments away from the war in order to ship Jews to their deaths. No, we know it because at the very end, the last statement he made before killing himself was about Jews. It preoccupied him from his early days in his Mein Kampf, his journal, My Struggle, and it preoccupied him on the day he killed himself, knowing that Germany had lost World War II. Keep fighting the eternal enemy of mankind, the Jew. This is what matters, Germans. You know, so we die, but it doesn't matter. There is still the greater battle. I'm paraphrasing essentially. And the Israel hatred that permeates the Arab world and good parts of the Muslim world outside of the Arab world is very dangerous to the rest of mankind. Very dangerous. There may be a major war as a result of Iranian acquisition of nuclear weapons and the acquisition of nuclear weapons by people whose major goal in life is to eradicate the Jewish state. So there's no way around it. You can't ignore Jew hatred, not because it's not moral to ignore it. That's a separate issue. It's just in our self-interest, our meaning the rest of mankind's self-interest, to worry about this hatred, the greatest in history. The phone number is 1-8-PRAGER-776, 1-8-PRAGER-776, which is 877-243-7776. I am placing before you an important thesis, and that is that there is no hatred. There is none. There is no other country that will not swim in the same swimming pool as an athlete from another country. It does not exist. I don't believe it existed in my lifetime. Countries at war would still compete together in the Olympics. There is no parallel to the hatred of Israel as a state, to the hatred of Jews as people. There just isn't. Now, the question is why, and I'll have theories on that. Indeed, a book of my 4 books, the one I least mentioned, is in fact exactly about this. It's titled "Why the Jews?" And with the upsurge of Jew hatred called anti-Semitism that has taken place in the last years, Simon & Schuster asked that it be refurbished, if you will, reissued. Well, it was never out of issue, so it's always been issued, but it was revised. That's it, revised So there is an even more recent edition of Why the Jews, The Reason for Anti-Semitism, out, and you can order it anywhere you want, and obviously through DennisPrager.com. But anywhere you want, I don't care. Get a used copy; it doesn't matter. But I just want you to know this is something I have given a lifetime of thought to, because whatever you are, if you like Jews, you have to think about it. If you hate Jews, you have to think about it. Even if you are neutral on Jews, you have to think about it, because it will affect you anyway. Jew hatred affects others. Look at the impact of Islamic terror and its preoccupation with destroying Israel. Israel is the size, my friends, of Belize. Imagine if the world, if the United Nations were as preoccupied with Belize as it is with Israel. You would start to wonder, what gives with Belize? Why all this hatred of, and what is fundamentally an utterly decent place? That's the thing. It's a fundamentally very decent place. Flaws, America has flaws, but America is fundamentally a very decent place too. But when I saw this piece, that an Iranian won't swim in the... Better to leave the Olympics. The whole aim of an athlete in life is to get into the Olympics. But it is better not to be contaminated by being in the same pool as a Jew from Israel. That I realized this was worthy of bringing to your attention as an ultimate issue on the Ultimate Issues Hour. 1-8-PRAGER-776. I'm Dennis Prager.
This episode of Timeless Wisdom will continue right after this.
Here's something most people don't know. When Warren Buffett was just 13 years old, he didn't put his money into a savings account. While other kids were earning next to nothing at local banks, Buffett put $114 into a little-known investment. Today, that $114 would be worth over $15 million. And it wasn't a risky trade. It wasn't even insider knowledge. It was an account that's been around since 1888. And over the last 25 years, it's averaged 29% a year. That's what happens when your money is allowed to compound. Compare that to today's savings accounts, paying less than 0.5%. While inflation quietly eats away at your buying power. Buffett understood early, banks are great businesses, just not for savers. If you'd like to see what some investors call the 29% account, go now to secretaccount29.com. That's secretaccount, the numbers 29.com. secretaccount29.com.
Now, back to more of Dennis Prager's Timeless Wisdom.
You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show, the Ultimate Issues Hour. The ultimate issue is the greatest hatred in human history and continues to this day, the hatred of Jews and the hatred of the Jewish state, Israel. And what prompted it most immediately was the news story that I just reported recently about Iran removing its swimmer because he would have to compete with an Israeli in the same swimming pool. Better to not even proceed with the possibility of getting an Olympic medal than to have to be with a Jew from Israel. There is no parallel to that. There is none. Nobody is threatening the eradication of any other country. It doesn't happen than the Jewish state. And it's amazing how the world, each side has its grievances. Well, of course each side has its grievances. That's like saying each side breathes. That's not the issue, that each side has its grievances. It's that there is no parallel to the extermination desire that has permeated Jewish history and now the Jewish state. 1-8-PRAGER-776. We go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Fatiha. Hi, Fatiha.
Yes. Hi, Dennis. How are you?
Well, thanks for calling.
Well, I do have to agree with you that, yes, the Jew is probably the most hated. But I was reading the Bible, and I'm a Muslim, and I was just reading the Bible, just trying to understand all scriptures. And I think maybe the hatred of the Jew is based on, enshrined in the Bible, it's pretty much Jewish stories. I don't know how familiar you are with the Bible or, how far as you read, but there were stories about the prophet David and the prophet Moses and many Jewish prophets, and some of these stories are so outrageous. Some of these, even I don't agree with.
Well, David was a king, not a prophet, but it doesn't matter.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. I'm a Muslim. Maybe I should have said I'm speaking from. That's what we're.
Yeah, that's okay. Anyway, I am familiar with it. In fact, I've been teaching it for my whole adult life. But there's no way that I would expect you to know that. But I am familiar, and there are very negative stories about Jews in the Jewish Bible.
Right.
But remember, these are Jews who wrote them, who wrote those stories. So it's like saying that there are negative stories about Americans, but if Americans write them, it's a credit to Americans that they're so self-critical.
Right, but what I'm saying is, if these stories are true and they are so negative, then maybe this is the reason why Jews are looked at as negative people. Because if the Jews are writing their own history, the David had 700 wives. This is according to the Bible.
Well, Solomon did.
Well, Solomon.
Yeah, but in any event, yes, David, in fact, committed adultery and had a man killed in order to sleep with that man's wife, which is pretty disgusting and hardly unique. Right. It's hard to imagine that anybody hates the Jews because 2,500 years ago, a Jew committed adultery.
Right, but these are the stories of the Jew.
Well, there are other stories. Yeah,
there are other stories about many religions. But what I'm saying is,
no. But there are also stories. This is also the people that brought the Ten Commandments into the world and introduced the world to God. Well, by the way, which I happen to think are reasons why there is such Jew hatred. But it's not because of the bad stories. Anyway, I appreciate what you're saying, Fatiha. It's hard to imagine that those are the roots. I think the roots are very deep, and that they go to the heart of the human condition. I do believe that, and I'll explain what I think they are in a moment. I just want to have more important to me right now than explaining, although explaining is my natural inclination, or at least attempts to do so, is to have people understand that there is no parallel hatred. Not that other peoples have not been hated. I mean, what the Hutus did to the Tutsis in Rwanda is that genocide bespoke an unbelievable hatred. The Armenians were hated by the Turks. The Poles were hated by the Germans. All the Slavs were. The Russians were. I mean, the amount of hatreds in human history is spectacular. But the ongoing hatred of the Jew has no parallel, nor the depth. That the notion, what's called exterminationist ideas, these have been essentially anti-Jewish, not anti any other group. And again, there is no parallel to the hatred of a country as there is to the hatred of Israel. None. I mean, North Korea is a truly evil state, and it has none of the hatred directed toward it that Israel does, which is essentially an unbelievably decent place. It's that's what I mean, and that's what is worth explaining. Brian, also in Philadelphia. Hi, Brian. Dennis Prager.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
It's a terrible, terrible thing that you're talking about, and there's nothing that can take away from that or the importance of it, but we have to remember that well into the 60s in this country, there were great numbers of white people that would not swim with blacks. And I think racism, which I personally think anti-Semitism is a form of racism, racism in general is like the worst thing that there is in this world, because it just seems to be part of a lot of human nature.
Yeah, I agree with every word you said. It is the worst. Racism is the greatest evil because it judges people by something they cannot help and which is of no consequence. It's like being hated for having a certain type of earlobe.
Unfortunately, it's being hated just for who you are.
Yes, exactly.
Not knowing who you are.
Well, it's not even for who you are. It's for what you are. You know, they don't even know you. It's exactly right. I agree. And that there were whites that did this. It's a fact, and the fact can never be denied. But that white who would not have swum in a pool with a black American, that lowlife, that fool, was not spending his life working on the extermination of all blacks on Earth. This exterminationist element, that has been unique to Jew haters. This people has to be destroyed. And indeed, like Iran today, wanting to destroy Israel. There's no parallel to that. The guy who would not swim with a black was probably not devoting his life to figuring out how to spread some biological or chemical thing around Africa to destroy every African country, which hardly makes the guy good. It just means that there was something different. We'll continue on the Ultimate Issues Hour on the Dennis Prager Show.
This episode of Timeless Wisdom will continue right after this.
Here's something most people don't know. When Warren Buffett was just 13 years old, he didn't put his money into a savings account. While other kids were earning next to nothing at local banks, Buffett put $114 into a little-known investment. Today, that $114 would be worth over $15 million. And it wasn't a risky trade. It wasn't even insider knowledge. It was an account that's been around since 1888. And over the last 25 years, it's averaged 29% a year. That's what happens when your money is allowed to compound. Compare that to today's savings accounts, paying less than 0.5%. While inflation quietly eats away at your buying power. Buffett understood early, banks are great businesses, just not for savers. If you'd like to see what some investors call the 29% account, go now to secretaccount29.com. That's secretaccount, the numbers 29.com. Secretaccount29.com.
Now, back to more of Dennis Prager's Timeless Wisdom.
Prager it is. Dennis Prager here. This is the Ultimate Issues Hour. We're talking to you about the ultimate hatred on the Ultimate Issues Hour, the hatred of Jews and the Jewish state, therefore. And I used as the jumping off point the news report that the Iranian swimmers will not swim in the Olympics or even in the heats with a Jew from Israel, and they give up their right to even compete. Better not to compete at all than be in a swimming pool with a Jew from Israel. This is the Iranian regime, and there is no hatred that parallels this. None in the world. And so, look, I mean, think about it. A lot of Americans had harbored a lot of anger and even hatred toward Japan for Pearl Harbor and for the massacres of the Japanese in Asia and of American prisoners of war. Nobody ever advocated exterminating Japan. It never occurred to anybody. Even in the depths of the deepest hatred. And as vile as the Japanese government and army were at the time, they never contemplated eliminating the United States. It just didn't occur. Defeating is defeating, and eliminating is eliminating. That's the unique difference between Jew hatred and other hatreds. And it has huge impact on the world, which is why it is an issue of far greater concern than to Jews, or certainly ought to be. If it isn't, people are making a very big mistake. By dismissing Hitler as a Jews problem, it ended up 50 million people got killed in World War II because Hitler wasn't taken as seriously as he should be, because his Jew hatred was considered just, so what? You know, it's not nice. I mean, most people didn't support it outside of Germany. Most people didn't support it in Germany, for that matter. But it didn't matter. It wasn't taken that. But there's no greater index about the type of person or group you're dealing with than its hatred of Jews. That is a sign, a neon flashing sign, saying, "World, watch out! I am very dangerous." All righty, let's go to more of your calls here. And in Santa Monica, California, Alan, thank you for calling, Alan. Dennis Prager.
Yes, hi, it's a pleasure. In my opinion, in my observation, the reason in present-day history, let's say 100 years from the present, why I think a lot of people have animosity towards Jewish people is that for such a small percent of the U.S. population, for instance, about 2%, many leftists, socialists, communists, and Leninists, etc., go down the list, appear to be Jewish people with Jewish last names. And they head up organizations and they run organizations, like, for instance, the ACLU, this law center, the People for the American Way. You can go down an endless list. And it seems like 70.
All right, let me respond. Hold on, let me respond. Okay, first, as it happens, the head of the ACLU was Anthony Romero, who's not Jewish, and I was just looking up because I saw your call. I looked up their website under latest events. So in South Carolina, they'll be opening up in Charleston, South Carolina, they're opening up a new affiliate. This was on the top of their page of news or whatever. And the mayor, Joe Riley, will be at the ribbon cutting for the ACLU office. I wish that only some segment of the Jewish population supported the ACLU. It would be a non-issue then. There were many answers to what you raised, many answers, and that's one of them. Another one is that even if that were the case, that doesn't explain exterminationist hatred. It explains annoyance, even dislike. It doesn't explain exterminationist hatred that we're talking about. And third, the people who hate Jews argue from the other side just as much. Look at all the people who got us into war, all those Jewish neocons. So they argue that there were too many Jews on the right, as you just argued there were too many Jews on the left. We'll be back in a moment.
This episode of Timeless Wisdom will continue right after this. Your beloved dog and a stranger are both drowning. You can only save one. Who do you save? Every time Dennis Prager asks that question, his audience splits three ways. 1/3 chooses the dog, 1/3 chooses the stranger, and 1/3 aren't sure. Why? Because we live in an age where increasingly feelings define right and wrong. But if morality is based on emotion, then murder, rape, and theft are just opinions. And if people feel justified, why is rioting or destruction wrong at all? In his new book, If There Is No God, Dennis Prager explains why civilizations cannot survive without objective morality and why Judeo-Christian values shape the moral foundations of the free world.
If you claim that certain things are good, certain things are evil, independent of how you feel about it, you are, in effect, affirming God.
If There Is No God by Dennis Prager. Available now at PragerStore.com. That's PragerStore.com. Now, back to more of Dennis Prager's Timeless Wisdom.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Ultimate Issues Hour, an hour each week. This specific hour, in fact, each week devoted to an ultimate issue. The greatest hatred ever is the issue this week, the hatred of Jews, and by extension, the hatred of the Jewish state. And those who believe that isolating the Jewish state has nothing to do with anti-Semitism, which is the fancy word and euphemism for Jew hatred, are deeply naive. That only one nation on earth is chosen for delegitimizing an ultimate extinction, and it happens to be, by coincidence, the Jewish state, is a little hard to believe. And I come to this particular hour on this subject by way of this article that Iran has pulled a swimmer from Olympic trials after he drew the same heat, in other words, the same race, as an Israeli athlete. Better to leave the Olympics than compete in the same swimming pool as a Jew from Israel. That's unique on earth. We do not have that elsewhere. There is no other example that I know of in the United Nations. When the Israelis would get up, an Israeli ambassador would get up, massive walkout by Arab countries, and then by their delegates. And you say, well, they don't recognize Israel. Yeah, but there is no other example of it. It's amazing how people find that easily acceptable. Well, they just don't recognize Israel. But there is no other example of this. People go to war and recognize each other. It's just, did we ever stop recognizing Germany or recognizing Japan? What are we talking about? Was there a desire to exterminate the country? It had no right to exist. The Nazis had no right to exist. But the Germans did. Still be a German state. There is no parallel to Jew hatred. And by the way, there is actually something that comes close but doesn't quite get there. That's America hatred. In fact, that's a serious part of my book, Why the Jews? The Reason for Anti-Semitism. And that's why I'm happy they asked for a revised edition. The first one never went out of print. It's been, in fact, the Jerusalem Post just called my work, which I co-wrote with Joseph Telushkin, called my work on anti-Semitism the seminal work on anti-Semitism, just a couple of months ago in the Jerusalem Post. This is not to boast to you, to tell you that this is something that I've given serious thought to, and it's been seriously received. But whatever your explanation, and I have not devoted this Ultimate Issues Hour to explaining it, I have many, and I think they transcend purely rational explanations. People like scapegoats or economic explanations, or there's always been racism. These are all true, but none of them go to the heart of the greatest hatred, which transcends the norm. And I think Christians in America, a lot of, not all, but a lot of Christians got it right and understand that there are transcendent elements to hating or not hating the Jews. Absolutely. There's no doubt in my mind about it, in fact. And let's go to some more of your calls. And we go to John in Chicago. John, Dennis Prager, thank you for calling.
Hello, Dennis. Thank you. I've been listening and enjoying the conversation, and I really think that this hatred of the Jews goes back to the sense that the Jews are God's chosen people.
I couldn't agree more. I am convinced that is the biggest single reason, whether people believe it or not.
It never goes away. Most of the world has forgotten that they believe anything, but they haven't forgotten that resentment, that hatred.
Right.
The Father loves them.
What is your religion?
I'm Methodist.
Yeah, I had a feeling. I am. If I get a call that the Jews are the chosen people, the odds are it will be a Christian, not a Jew, who makes that call. It's just a fact of life. God bless you. Thank you very much. Jews are very uneasy with that concept for a whole host of reasons that go beyond this particular hour. All right, let's go to Minna in Los Angeles. Hello, Minna. Dennis Prager.
Yes, hi, Dennis. Thank you for taking my call. This is Mina. I wanted to make a comment. In Islamic Republic of Iran, it's not the individual athlete that makes any decision if they want to participate or not.
I agree, and I said they pulled him out. I didn't but remember, Mina, it doesn't matter if this particular swimmer likes Israelis or Jews. It's irrelevant. It was as irrelevant as whether any individual German liked Jews or not. The society has declared war to exterminate the Jewish state.
It's the Islamic Republic.
You're right. You're right. The Islamic Republic.
They're the cancer in the region. And,
I agree.
As long as they're there, the hatred is going to be around. But that athlete, if he didn't follow the order, would have been treated like Saddam's athlete.
I agree with every word you're saying. I agree with you. It doesn't negate. It just sustains what I said. I thank you kindly. All righty. Let's go to Philadelphia and Jim. Okay. Jim in Philadelphia. Dennis Prager. Hi.
Hi, Dennis.
just wanted to say that the hatred of Jews, I believe, stems from the denial of the Old Testament, of the Christian idea of salvation by like a sacrifice of a man God, and it's which the Christians, I think, like to use the Old Testament to validate, but it's not there. So
yeah, but Christians are generally the biggest friends that Israel and the Jews have today. And the example I gave is an Islamic example, the pulling of the swimmer and the country that wants to exterminate Israel is not Christian.
Well, may not be, but if you read the New Testament, it's so negative, and a lot of it is political.
Yeah, that's a separate issue. Why Christian anti-Semitism, which was very real and very long, and which, to his credit, John Hagee has devoted his life to combating, is another subject. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. Final segment of this Ultimate Issues Hour, and it's the ultimate hatred is the subject of the Ultimate Issues Hour. I explain it at length in my book, Why the Jews, and the Iranians pulling out their Olympic swimmer from a pool with an Israeli athlete, a Jew from Israel. Had it been an Arab from Israel, I'm sure they would not have pulled him out. And that is that is unparalleled. There is no hatred. I don't care what your feelings are toward Jews, toward Israel. I mean, I care, but I don't care for the point of the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is one. Remember, I prefer clarity to agreement. There is no hatred like the hatred of Jews. There is no hatred like the hatred of the Jewish state. There isn't. There isn't. And to say that those two are related, hatred of the Jewish state and hatred of the Jew, is to state that 2 and 2 really are 4. It's something that a 7-year-old would completely understand immediately and wonder why you even had to make the point. And so it is worth considering, question number 1, why? Question number 2 is what to do about it, because it does affect the world. Iran's Jew hatred of the Jewish state, and announced desire to exterminate it, and its Holocaust denial, which is we get used to it. You know, it's funny. People get used to the incredible. It's both a blessing and a curse in human nature that we adapt. But it is a curse. It is difficult to overstate the amount of hatred that has to eat a brain that will then deny the Holocaust, probably the most archived event in history of any single event, including and especially by Germans. I always wonder among those who deny the Holocaust, why did the Germans go along with the denial? What was in it for them? To blacken the name of their country's history? Look, it's not even worth discussing. What is worth discussing is why the greatest hatred is the greatest hatred. But my point on this Ultimate Issues Hour is that whether we like it or not, we are all affected by the greatest hatred in history, the hatred of the Jew and the hatred of the Jewish state. This is Dennis Prager.
Tomorrow on Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager.
For me, my complete happiness comes from God. It isn't that it isn't added to by my wife, my kids.
Then wait. Then it isn't your complete happiness.
God alone is the source of all my happiness.
The source is not the same as the whole.
Join us tomorrow to hear more on Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager. This has been Timeless Wisdom with Dennis Prager. Visit DennisPrager.com for thousands of hours of Dennis's lectures, courses, and classic radio programs, and to purchase Dennis Prager's Rational Bibles.
Here's Here's something most people don't know. When Warren Buffett was just 13 years old, he didn't put his money into a savings account. While other kids were earning next to nothing at local banks, Buffett put $114 into a little-known investment. Today, that $114 would be worth over $15 million. And it wasn't a risky trade, it wasn't even insider knowledge. It was an account that's been around since 1888, and over the last 25 years, it's averaged 29% a year. That's what happens when your money is allowed to compound. Compare that to today's savings accounts, paying less than 0.5%. While inflation quietly eats away at your buying power. Buffett understood early, banks are great businesses, just not for savers. If you'd like to see what some investors call the 29% account, go now to secretaccount29.com. That's secretaccount, the numbers 29.com. Secretaccount29.com.